introduce you to the panelists, but our chair for tonight is Donna Paige. She's psychotherapist and meditation teacher, and she's been co-leading this initiative on aging in community with Alan Ryan. And I'll turn the floor over to you then. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And welcome everybody. It's really lovely to have such a wonderful turnout today. And I think we're extraordinarily lucky to have opportunity today to hear from three outstanding members of our community who work tirelessly with passion to blaze a new path for us in our aging years. I have been working with Ellen since last August on this initiative of aging in community, and I see her tireless dedication to this initiative. I want to go over a few housekeeping things. First of all, there are washrooms very nearby. If you go left out the door, the first hallway to your left, if you just turn left there, just down the hallway a little bit. There is a sign-up sheet somewhere around with a pen. If any of you are interested in being on an email listing to get future information about events or resources or information, please sign up and before you leave today. And that will be circulating. I can't see it over there. Is it still there? Oh, it's over there.
Circulating.
Somebody, oh, it's circulating. Okay, that's great. Also, you have been given cards, a couple of cards. Today what we're going to do is we're going to have the three speakers speak first, and during their talks we won't be eliciting questions, but please write down questions or comments that you might have as we go along. And when they're finished, we will just collect the cards, and then the speakers can sort of sort out who's going to answer what, unless it's direct from personally. Okay? Also, I want to thank Rafaela here, this little techie whiz over here, who is the intern in the Galbraith Center for Aging. She's Communications and History.
Soon to be one more year left.
Yes. And Joyce, who's an arts and science student, who's been here to really help us a lot today, so we really appreciate their help. Also, to let you know that Rafaela will be videotaping this session. You will not. She's videotaping from behind, so there won't be any faces. Is everybody okay with that? Promise no faces on this.
Yes, definitely not.
Just the cameras. Okay. The format will be that we are going to have each speaker will speak for 15 minutes, and then we'll collect his questions, and then there'll be a 20-minute period for answering. So you have to
Video?
No, everybody, I'm not ready.
Yes, no.
So I'd like to spend a moment just introducing you to each of the speakers, and maybe they could stand up so that you can see them when I do that. I'm going to start with Ellen Ryan. Ellen is a Professor Emeritus in Gerontology here at McMaster. Her psychological research examines how to foster resilient aging through the decades from young old to the oldest old. Her special interests have been ageism, disability, and life stories. More recently, she's turned to the issue of how to prepare for our own old age by cultivating mutual support networks. She features this topic in blogs on the website Writing, Aging, and Spirit. She co-leads a local aging and community initiative. Dr. Denise O'Connor is a policy advisor and group facilitator with expertise in stakeholder engagement processes and strategic innovation. She holds a PhD in public policy expertise and her expertise is in system dynamics, stakeholder engagement processes, healthcare systems, and the aging population. Denise is currently working on behalf of the Hamilton Council on Aging with the City of Hamilton to develop an older adult plan for the City of Hamilton. And Bernie, sorry, I can't remember your last name, Bernie.
Baldwin.
Baldwin. Bernie Baldwin. Sorry. I'm an older person. I think I'm around the oldest old or something. Bernie's employment up until his retirement in 2003 was at First Place Hamilton. He was the Director of Community Ministry and provided pastoral care for residents and their families. At present, he volunteers as a peer support person in a program called Seniors Talking to Seniors at Catholic Family Services, as a facilitator of a group of residents at Macapa Lodge Long-Term Care, and as a senior class assistant with the Gerontology department here at McMaster. In recent years, following the research and writing of James Barron, he's facilitated guided autobiography groups in 2 local church communities. So please welcome me in, please join me in welcoming these wonderful speakers. Okay, so I'll invite Ellen to begin.
I'm going to introduce the topic of aging and community mutual support networks and seniors co-housing. And I'm going to do that by way of a video. I was thinking, well, why should I present a video of me presenting this information? Well, the reason is it's an 8-minute video. And I usually speak on this on and on and on and on. And for a panel, I think it's a good idea to get an efficient introduction to the topic. As you'll see, my lifelong focus has been on what the individual can do to optimize one's own aging. As a psychologist, focused on the person and what we can do as individuals. The video takes you through key features of this important perspective to my realization of the limitations of such an approach. It's not all up to the individual. We have to depend on the people around us and on the circumstances around us to age well. Preparing for our So I've moved into the process of how to build community, going beyond the individual and the nuclear family. Preparing for our own aging includes, I've learned, building a support network and creating meaning and purpose even for potential years of frailty. Caring relationships are at the heart of what we mean by aging in community, a sense of trust and interdependence enhanced over time through positive interactions and collaboration and shared interests and pursuits. So we're trying to overcome the overemphasis in the society that we've all grown up in, emphasizing independence, independence, independence. The result of that kind of emphasis can mean that we'll all be in our individual 4-bedroom houses, if we can afford them still, all alone, not seeing anybody, and that doesn't seem to be the most desirable end. Until we are taken by stretcher to a nursing home. So we're looking for, widening the alternatives for aging between living in your same old home that you had as you were a middle-aged adult raising your family and nursing home. We want to increase as many possible alternatives and support the older population as we're all creating those new alternatives.
Awesome.
Yes.
Imagine our good old age in community. My name is Ellen Ryan. As a gerontologist, I have been studying old people and old age for decades. Now I am a member of the first wave of baby boomers on the threshold of our own old age. How should my husband and I choose to age well? Long ago, as I watched my parents head into old age, I started to apply lessons of optimal aging for body, mind, and spirit. I have developed better eating habits, maintained and adapted physical exercise to help my body age well. I no longer ice skate nor play squash. but hiking and long-distance walking are favorite pastimes now. I've added lifting weights and yoga to build up strength and flexibility. I've continued to seek mental challenges and opportunities to stretch my mind as I continue my professional work and develop new civic engagements. I've begun to explore my potential for creativity by writing poetry and playing with my camera, especially for shadow photos, as you have already noticed in this video. In terms of spirit, I take time for contemplation through journaling, prayer, and meditation. I reflect on my changing purpose in life and my options to create meaning for myself and others around me. My vision of a good old age is changing from a focus on making individual choices early, that is, our aging is in our own hands, to a new view based on interdependence, on connectedness. Now, I am inspired by expanding possibilities with communities for an even better, good old age. I aspire to an engaged elderhood. Following Theodore Roszak, I want to practice the gratitude and generosity to which true elders are called. With the joy of gratitude and generosity, I want to continue to contribute to society as long as possible. I want to harvest my life lessons so that I can share wisdom even as I experience more and more of life. I want to connect with people of all ages, especially with young people, our future. In retirement, my husband and I still lead an active life with our family in our professional fields and through volunteering. But we wonder what will happen when one of us becomes ill and the other too frail to maintain the caregiving. Like my parents, what happens to the one of the two of us who survives? Isolation is the greatest danger in aging. More people living alone, pushed aside by ageist stereotypes, less opportunity to make contributions. There's a danger of withdrawing inward, losing energy to even make the effort to connect.
In fact, progress in Western civilization seems to have created a general problem of isolation and disconnection. As we strive to achieve independence, have our own possessions, and be self-sufficient, have we perhaps lost the essence of belonging? Might we want to look back at earlier generations and societies for strategies to anchor individuals in community with a sense of belonging?
I think we need to relearn the benefits of interdependence for all in society, including the old. Aging in community is a choice we can make. More and more, I am coming to believe that we need community as we age, to help us maintain our sense of purpose and meaning, and to help us contribute to the larger community. Community means giving and receiving, reciprocity. Community means offering the gifts of elders to the world through service. Community means connections with other older people and with younger people. We elders can lead the way to putting the neighbor back into our neighborhoods. We can choose interdependence over the so popular notion of independence. Our aging future is often posed as either an idealistic image of aging in our own home or the specter of nursing home. Building community is a concept that offers a multitude of alternatives for social connections and supports, as well as for housing. Aging and community models can be viewed in terms of social networks and housing. Locally, my friend Donna and I have been holding meetings to create an aging and community group. We'll begin with mutual support, but we are also discussing housing alternatives. Mutual support groups often emerge from groups formed for specific purposes: church groups, book clubs, golfing groups, choirs such as the Young at Heart group depicted here. Branches of the Red Hat Society have sprung up everywhere, deriving great energy from supporting each other in their individual resilient aging. The name, by the way, derives from Jenny Joseph's poem. The opening lines read, "When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple, with a red hat that doesn't go and doesn't suit me." In my experience, one of the benefits of forming writing groups is the sense of connection emerging as we regularly expose our deepest thoughts to each other. I am especially impressed by the village model for creating neighborliness.
The Village model, based on Boston's famous Beacon Hill Village network, offers a flexible approach to building a social network explicitly for mutual support. Seniors gather to plan a mutual support network. They elect a board of directors and vote on a structure. Members pay a yearly membership and commit to volunteering as they can. An international village-to-village network offers lots of support to individual villages. More than 200 social villages belong to the network now, and all rely on member volunteers. Many also employ one or more staff members. The most common services offered are information and referral, help with transportation and shopping, household and computer maintenance. Many villages and other social networks make use of a time bank, a computer database system to keep track of the time contributed to the community. In this way, each person contributes according to their individual talents and preferences.
Donna and I have been gratified by the generous spirit expressed by our peers in our early aging and community meetings. Participants want to learn to give and to receive without keeping track. Villages build strong communities with reduced isolation, ability to age in place, opportunities to contribute, and access to healthcare and social services.
Seniors co-housing is another strategy for building community. A group of seniors gathers to plan their new home together and then recruits like-minded others. The fundamental values of co-housing include self-directed by residents, small private space along with large shared space, mutual support, working together for the good of all, commitment to sustainability through green building and sharing, for example cars, and easy access to involvement in the wider community. Models of co-housing from Europe and now across North America emphasize regular group dining as a strategy to build and maintain community. But groups differ in terms of the intensity of gathering for meals, some daily, weekly, and others monthly.
I like the practice developed in one co-housing project of a monthly rotation schedule for residents to host a meal for 3 to 4 others. Such small gatherings, spontaneous and planned, build community.
Architectural goals for seniors in co-housing include making natural spaces indoors and outdoors for residents to interact with each other. Porches, patios, community rooms, gardens, and walking paths are important components of planning.
Creating opportunities for spontaneous interactions is what especially appeals to me. As Downhelder Camara has said, when we dream alone, it's just a dream, but when we dream together, it's the beginning of reality. Our good old age is in our hands together.
Thank you for watching that. I have to admit, it's a little embarrassing to sit through it myself. And I want to change a few slides. I just want to make 3 points and adding some comments. One has to do with caring relationships, which is the core of any kind of mutual support program. The village model is creating mutual support without any physical space. People all live where they live, but you use what's available in your ordinary communities for meetings, and you get to know each other and support each other and provide the help that's needed. And there are all kinds of different strategies for doing that. And as mentioned, that can easily grow out of a book club, a church group, what are called naturally occurring aging groups. So many of us can look around and watch naturally occurring aging groups. Things that we've belonged to for a decade or more. One of the issues about caring relationships is learning to offer help, but also to receive help. And I've had personal experience with a cast, I guess this time it was this arm, this winter and spring having fallen on the ice. I had to learn to accept help. The natural response for me and so many other people, what can I do to help you, is nothing. Even if you're stranded and you can't get from point A to point B, or you're having a potluck and you can't get the cast wet and you can only do things with one hand, the natural response is nothing. We have to learn to accept help. And in my mutual support group, there have been a few people who say, who just hang on after I say nothing, and they're just waiting for me to, to say something that I could use help with. As we learn to accept these small helps, we become more aware of the needs of others. So learning to receive help is part of our learning to offer help. A second point is volunteering can benefit especially from mutual support. So I've been working on this, at least theoretically, for maybe 6 or 7 years longer than this current initiative, realizing that older volunteers need more support than the organizations can offer them. There used to be volunteer coordinators in agencies, a whole person as volunteer coordinator. Now there are volunteer coordinators who usually have 5 other jobs, and I see a few nods. So the organizations don't have enough resources for the care and feeding of volunteers. And the statistics show that half of volunteers do not continue a second year. That's a terrible loss in recruitment efforts and training efforts. And even worse, some of those people have an unsatisfactory experience with one organization and they give up, especially those who don't have volunteering as part of their life experience. And many, many people, where there's been both people working in the family, many people are retiring without having much experience volunteering. And I think that mutual support outside of the specific organization, mutual support for seniors who are volunteering in a variety of roles could help them to learn how to stay in the role that they have, to make wise decisions about shifting roles, and provide input to organizations about how to take care of senior volunteers. Another problem for organizations is we volunteer for 3 or 4 things when we first retire, and then we get more and more frail, and there comes a time when we're hanging on to the one role, and we can no longer do that role. And the church or the food bank or the university or their hints are not working. The person can't let go because it's their identity, it's their last role. If the person belonged to something larger, where there was discussion about the career of volunteering as you age, and people are expecting there are going to be changes in your health resources, changes in your family responsibilities. There's going to be ups and downs with your ability to volunteer, and ways where you can shift. If you're losing your eyesight, you can no longer read to people in the nursing home, but there's somebody in your group who takes Meals on Wheels, and you're still physically mobile, then you can switch and go with them over time. So mutual support for volunteering, I think, would help the individuals who are doing the volunteering and help thereby our wider community. And the third point is that our particular focus and what I'm speaking about here, the village model of mutual support and seniors co-housing, is about seniors figuring out how to solve their own problems on their own. We don't have to wait for the government to figure it out, and it's very clear the government isn't going to be able to figure it out for many of us. And with pensions being insecure for people retiring in, say, the next 10 years, and later, there's going to be more. The idea of having your own place until you die is not going to be economically feasible for large groups of people. So there's going to be the need for seniors to try to find their own solutions, but we also need that to happen in municipalities, in provinces, and the country, providing a context within which that can happen. And that leads us to the next talk about an age-friendly approach that municipalities can take toward dealing with our aging population. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call on Denise Connor.
It's just the one right in the center. Yeah. Just double click it and it should open.
Okay.
Hmm?
I saw you doing all these things.
Yeah.
I take my glasses off. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Ooh, that was great.
inviting me here today. It's a really important topic. It's important to me. I'm in the process of trying to sell my house to move into a condo. Just in preparation. Yes, or in preparation, I'm in the process of trying to sell my house to move into a condo because my husband is retired. And I'd like to say too that it's been interesting. I've been working in this field for only about 6 years. I'm not a gerontologist. I'm actually a political scientist. And I ended up in this aging field because I did my doctoral thesis on home care systems, but I did it on the system, not the services, and everyone decided I knew something, which I really didn't. But Betty Mugga, actually, who's here in the room, got me involved. Or is she still here? Wait, she's back. Got me involved with the Hamilton, with the age-friendly movement, sitting in your kitchen probably 6 years ago, I think it was. And so I get this really interesting idea that, oh, this makes sense to me. The whole, I don't know about aging, but I know about political systems and municipal systems and so forth. So here I am today, thanks to Betty, and there's a good third of you in the room that I worked with over the last few years. Most recently, Bernie was I met not too long ago in this, as we've been working on the older adults plan. So it's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces here. So the context for, as Ellen's pointing out, we've been hearing for years that it's our personal responsibility to eat well, to exercise, to do all these things, which it is, it's true. But there's also a dimension of, as Ellen mentioned, a dimension of the environment that affects our capacity to age well. How many people fell this winter and broke something, or know somebody who did? I didn't, but I know somebody who did. Everybody knows somebody who fell and broke, at least one person. It was brutal. So this is a very easy example of how the environment affects our capacity to age well, because at some point, as you know, the more frail you get, a broken hip can be the end, right? So that's just one piece of the environment. There's lots others. And so there's this notion of, what is the social and the built environment that you need in order to be able to have an optimal aging experience, notwithstanding disasters. And so the World Health Organization, I think it was 2008 or 7, came out with this. It started doing research all over the world with seniors, with older people, asking them what would be an ideal age-friendly city for you. And they came out with 8 dimensions and a checklist, which I haven't included here today, of really the ideal kind of scenario where we would like to age. And interestingly, everybody around the world said the same thing. And as we've been working on the older adults plan in Hamilton, we're hearing the same things exactly from people. So it's very universal. Everyone's personal experience is a little bit different in terms of what they need to get there, but what people are looking for is very similar. So these are the 8 dimensions, and they are, I'll read them starting with housing, upper right. Housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment if you choose, communication and information. This is one of the most important things that we've heard, apart from what you know about housing. Community support and health services, outdoor spaces and buildings, again, that navigation piece, and transportation. And the top 3 from what we understand is housing, transportation, income security, which is not something that they touch on, and then, of course, knowing what's available and how to find it. And we've been hearing that is one of the, and we know from research that that's the case, one of the most difficult things for people is knowing what to look for and where to look. Usually I have a watch and I broke it, it's broken, so I know, I think I started at 4, right? Oh, perfect, oh, excellent, thank you. So what are we doing in Hamilton about this? So Hamilton Council on Aging, who employs me on a contractual basis, off and on for the last 6 years or so. Because Margaret Denton, many of you know Margaret Denton, she was at an international conference in St. Petersburg, Russia, where this idea came up, where it was presented, this idea of an age-friendly city. And she brought it to Hamilton, and 6 or so years ago, the Hamilton Council on Aging applied for a Trillium Foundation grant and received it to start doing this work. And so they started by doing focus groups around the city, asking, what is it that Hamilton needs? And from there, we tried to get the city, she tried to get the city engaged and different United States Social Planning Research Council, different people who have influence to make change, because it's all very well good to put out recommendations, but if no one's listening to you, as we all know, anybody who's done any advocacy, it doesn't do you any good. So most recently, 2 years ago, we actually started getting the attention of the city and United Way. And we started what we called a collaborative and started exploring, what is it we need to do in order to start working on this in a holistic way in Hamilton? Because it's one thing to have actions, but you want people to think about the needs of older adults as a cohort, you know, even though there's differences across that cohort. What we've learned is that people who work for the city tend to plan for people, but they don't think about the differences of people's needs. And we found that quite consistently in the research that was done, apart from public health. And even public health, they are to plan for seniors particularly, but they really don't think about how they're communicating necessarily, or how people are getting to where they need to go. There's a whole bunch of things that they don't even think about, whether the font is big enough. There's a lot of things that they just isn't on their radars, which was very surprising. We found that to be true. So about 2 years ago, I think, the city, we finally figured out what we have to do is create an older adults plan for the city. And this was happening in a number of cities around the country. Mississauga has one. City of Toronto was working on it. Haliburton has one. So we thought this is the way to go. And finally, last December, we got approval and funding to start doing this work. So over the last 4 months, what we've been doing is, I'm following my slides, I see. The last 4 months, what we've been doing is doing some public consultations, building on work that we've done in the past, and asking people, focusing on certain areas of what is it we need in Hamilton to be more age-friendly. So this is what we've been doing. But we also, the other important point to note is that the city has done a lot of work in different areas. Housing and homelessness is one, and they actually have they did a massive 2-year public consultation. Some of you were probably at some of the public consultations that they did. Ellen probably was there. I know they did one at McMaster. And in 2013, December, they released a housing and homelessness action plan. And we're also including, so when we did our consultation, we didn't focus on housing so much because the city had done that work already and had talked to a lot of older people. The important thing about the housing plan is they don't have a segment on older people's needs, but what they do have is an equity lens, which means that they need to look at the needs of people with disabilities and people who don't have English as their first language or who are older. So they've done it that way instead. So the next stage would be to start specifically looking at the needs of those groups, older and with a disability and no English. That's your most disadvantaged group. And they're moving into this implementation phase, and there's going to be a community engagement on that. So we're in our plan recommending that there be a seniors or older adults table to talk about the needs of older adults. So here's some of the recommendations that are from that plan that we are putting in our plan. So these will be recommendations in the older adult plan. That all municipal planning decisions with respect to mix and range follow the policy direction of the urban Hamilton official plan. And that's a very progressive plan that talks about creating this idea called complete communities. That means that it's a place where you can work, live, and play without having to go a long ways to somewhere. So there's been a tendency in the past, for example, there's a couple of senior centers, you know, the one on the mountain. Well, if you live in Dundas, it's really not convenient, certainly if you have to take the bus to go to that senior center. So even though in Dundas there's a seniors club, my friends here from Dundas will tell you that they don't appeal to a broad range of needs and wants. So that's part of the new thinking about complete communities. This is really important, increasing housing affordability, stability, and choice in communities across Hamilton. I know in many communities, I live in Ancaster, and everybody says, oh, Ancaster, their people are all rich. Well, there's a lot of older people who are maybe house rich and cash poor, and they want to stay in their community, and there's nowhere for them to go, because there just simply aren't enough alternatives. The next point is that there's no national housing strategy for the federal government. I feel this is very dry after Ellen's heartfelt piece, but this is the policy environment. And this next one is specifically about housing, the housing services. It's not that relevant. So there's a number of challenges. As Ellen pointed out, this idea that we don't all want to be living in our 4-bedroom houses, living alone as we get older, but housing has been market driven and there's built stock, right? So how do what do you do about that? You start converting some of these big 4-bedroom houses in the future into co-housing units. That would be one idea. Lack of accessible housing. I know when we did some work with the city, their housing stock is not accessible. It's built in the 1950s and 60s, so there's some really serious issues on what they're going to do as they move forward on that, and especially with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act coming in. Personal choice to remain in current housing, sometimes until it's too late. You know, how many stories do we hear about people not wanting to leave their home, and all of a sudden they're in a housing situation that's untenable. And being proactive in planning is really a tricky one, because a lot of people don't want to. They don't want to leave their home. They've lived in one place. And this, as Ellen described it, you know, individualism. We're used to being autonomous. This idea of, hey, who could I live with? Could I live with her? I don't know. I couldn't tell you how many groups of women I've heard that all, you know, no disrespect to the men in the room, but we do expect to outlive our husbands for the most part, and think, well, I'm going to live with my girlfriends, and we're gonna create this. And I've had that conversation with my friends, and there's other groups of women, Betsy, Betty nodding at the back, that we've all said, yeah, that would be so awesome. So whether it happens or not, then you're thinking, well, I really like my friend, but I don't think she'd drive me crazy if I were living with her. So I know Ellen and Donna, they told me that this process that they're discussion really is a long process where you have to spend a lot of time getting to know people and really being sure that things are on the table and you share values. One of the biggest learnings I've had as I've been playing in this aging field is that nobody thinks they're old until, my grandmother lived to be 102. And I remember her telling me when she was about 95, I didn't feel old till I was 86. And that's when my grandfather died. And I think that's probably, she never did put them together, but I think that's what it is. And I was reading this poignant thing the other day about somebody was saying, well, you feel like you're always the same person, right? You're the same person, but you look in the mirror and you're being treated differently, or someone's, you know, calling you honey or dear, and you're thinking, but I'm not, like I'm me, you know, and so not preparing because you really don't think of yourself as old. And that's also a good thing, right? Because that keeps us vibrant, and we're not obsessing on things, and feeling young actually makes you younger. You know, we know that to be true as well. The other thing is everybody expects that they're going to hopes and expects they're going to die peacefully in their sleep, so they don't plan for disability. You know, when you were saying that, I thought, how brave of her to say, well, what if when one of us ends up like that? I'm thinking, that's not going to happen to me. That's what was going in my head when you said that. And this idea of being proactive rather than reactive, as Ellen pointed out too, is that it's very important that we plan ahead. I think that's all for my slides, but I guess I also just like to say though, Donna, I met with Donna in Ellen's group a couple of weeks ago, and as we've been developing the plan, we have a set of principles that will inform the plan. And one of the things that Donna said when we were, I think it was Donna, was talking about this notion of hospitality. Was that you?
It was actually Maureen.
Oh, it's Maureen. Oh, that's right, it's Maureen. It's Maureen. Sorry, Maureen. This notion of hospitality, and Ellen's point about it, so I was kind of influenced when I was writing my notes, not for my slides, but what you were saying earlier, this notion of being in relationships. And this notion of an age-friendly city is really about relationships, and it's about community. It's about creating community. And so while we have these 8 dimensions, the 8 dimensions are, you know, very discrete, but they're all interconnected, right? Everything is interconnected. And when we were at Maureen's house talking about co-housing and stuff, she talked about creating an atmosphere of hospitality. And we've been hearing a lot about recreation centers and senior centers and this sort of thing. And so in the principles, I actually took that notion of hospitality, that those places where people gather, there needs to be a really intentional approach to creating a hospitable environment. And even to the point where you intentionally pull volunteers, you know, find volunteers who will introduce themselves to the new people, who will instead of just, because for most people it's very difficult to go into a new situation, even if you're going with a friend. And if they don't speak your language, it's even worse, which is why we see just very certain types of people at these centers. So I've been finding that over the course of doing this work that I've really been influenced by everybody I've met, you know. And we had some really great conversations in Stony Creek and Bernie with the group that Bernie was in. Another really interesting gentleman showed up and was talking about how do we nudge people towards the kinds of changes they need to make. Not in a very gentle way. How do you just kind of create the incentives and what do you do to get the conversations going? So it's been for me, a very empowering kind of experience, and also very illuminating to go through this consultation process of listening to people. And that's where we're going with it. So we've got the older adults plan is going to go to the city council in September. It's a very short window that we had to work on it, 4 months, still is 5 months, and other communities did this in years. So we're hoping that it's comprehensive enough for people, and that the city has some uptake on it. So I hope that answers what you asked me to talk about. Thank you.
First of all, I'm very happy to be here and have been invited to share some information, some ideas, my perspective, I'll have to say. Besides my name, there was the name volunteer. I think that describes my later, more current life and more recent years. But as the introduction was made, my last employment was at First Place, and I had did the pastoral care there, and for various reasons. And so my approach to the issue of building community and dealing with seniors as I am, and it comes from another direction, I'll have to say. And so in that sense, I apologize for that, but then in another way, I say I think we have to pay more attention to some of the practical issues. And I give you as an example, when I came to First Place, I said, oh my goodness, here I have a building with 500 people living independently, plus or minus, I'm not sure exactly the number, but living independently. And I said, no, boy, am I going to get to know all these people. So what did I do? I got a chair, I went up to the elevator lobby, if you've ever been in an apartment building, and I sat there by the elevator, and I said, this is my way of interacting and meeting all the residents in the building. I sat there for an hour, and maybe one person came by, and they were on so much, they were on there from their house or their room to their appointment. They didn't have time to talk with anybody on the way, and I was there sitting. So I tried that for a few hours, I'll have to say, and finally said, this is not working at all. So I said, what can I do? What can I do? So I said, well, I'm going to get coffee and tea on a cart, and I'm going to go to each floor, and I'm going to invite all the people on that floor. I said, I'm going to ring a bell. I did. I brought an old school bell, and I rang the bell and said, coffee cart, coffee cart. Plus, I put a notice up about it, and I said who it was, what floor I was going to be on, and it was always Tuesdays at 10 to 11. I would invite, come as you wish, come on the floor, and the residents of the floor would come. At first, I used to borrow chairs to accommodate those who would come from their apartments, and then I found I ran out of chairs. So I got another younger volunteer who lived in the building, and I said, we need to bring about 10 or 12 chairs up to the floor. Now about 15, I think, by the time we got finished. And so 10 to 11, on Tuesdays, I was on the 22nd, 25th floor, 24th, next week, all the way down through the building. And when I got finished, I went back to the top. And I traveled through that building about 7 times in 8 years. So what happened though? When we were sitting, first of all, we made a circle of chairs, introduced ourselves by first names. People had a chance to see each other, talk with each other, and often I would ask the question, what is your daily contact? What is your daily contact? For me, I had dabbled in gerontology by this time, and so keeping in touch was an important element about being a senior, and being a senior who is safe. And so people came up with various ideas. One lady says, she says, I'm a volunteer for Teletouch. Teletouch, that's an organization, was under the umbrella of VON, I think at one time, and I think it still is. But anyway, this senior would call 5 other seniors each morning at a particular time. And she says, she says, sometimes that's my reason for getting up. And it was just a neat revelation to this group of other seniors. 2 other seniors said, oh, we do our laps. I said, laps? I said, what do you mean, laps? Well, these were 2 elderly ladies who lived next door to each other. And they, in fact, walked from their room down to the end of the hall, all the way over to the other end of the building, and then back again to their room. And they did that a few times each morning. They were early risers, somehow got to know each other, and did this quite regularly. And so we have making contact and physical exercise. And so I found out on another floor, there was 1 subscription to the Spectator and 5 readers. 5 readers. A got the paper, passed it on to B. B got the paper, passed it on to C. And D got the paper, and then passed it on to E. And so if the paper didn't come, B went over to A and said, where's the paper? Or how are you doing? I don't know which came first, but the fact was that here were 5 people who stayed, in a manner of speaking, connected. And one other one that is really, I find really wonderful. I'd like to say that the card caused all this. It didn't. It didn't. But these people did come to meet each other and know each other. And they were able to reach out to each other in a meaningful way. In a particularly meaningful way was on one floor, a lady in her 90s had been in hospital, seriously ill, but surely did not want to stay there. And she wanted to come home. And so with the help of 3 of her neighbors, unofficially, nobody's organizing it, no liability insurance or anything. There were just 3 neighbors of this lady, got together and said, hey, can we help, can we work together to provide support? Mind you, not nursing care. I'm simply saying, pick up a bottle of milk or check on her, are you up, how are you doing today, do you need anything special? Just incidental things, but they were good neighbors and enabled this lady to remain in her apartment on the same floor until she faced an illness that she just simply had to have medical assistance. And so it's those kinds of things, being a neighbor, being a good neighbor to one another, that these ladies undertook on their own, individually, and then they kind of worked together. They would talk to each other because they'd see them at the lunchroom or going to and from their apartment and say, have you seen so-and-so, or have you looked in on so-and-so today? How is she doing? And so on. And so it was just a wonderful example of a miniature community that grew up spontaneously and through the initiative of these ladies to be concerned about their neighbor, a neighbor particularly. One other example I'll use, but it's just simply we had a lady that had very great difficulty with English language. Then she was living in the midst of an English community. And the result was that she, through the help of some of her neighbors, she found out from her daughter, who is accessible by telephone, that she could go across and knock on a door. And the resident would come over. Didn't have to be the same one, but 2 or 3 residents were aware of the situation. They would come over, talk to the daughter, talk to mom and talk to the daughter, and the residents would work out difficulties. And so there was another instance in which a sort of a miniature community arose and provided care. Again, not nursing care, not medical responsibility, none of that. Just simply sort of helping mom talk to daughter, daughter talk to mom, and then the daughter talking to the resident for information. And so in some ways, that was my most recent employee experience, but it speaks to the element of building a community by risking, by offering assistance, by simply keeping in touch with those who live around us. And in that particular instance, it was just some beautiful things that occurred that I'd like to say the community caused that, but no, that's not realistic. It was just that these people were moved to interact and provide assistance to those around them, and that was beautiful. I guess in the paper today, you might have noticed that there's some churches in Burlington who are providing lunches for seniors.
Yes.
Wonderful, great idea, great idea. It's in the Spectator, and it simply says that there are a number of churches have gotten together, and they're going to provide a lunch. I think it is, I can't read it exactly, but anyway, they're nonetheless have decided that this was a way that we can get seniors together and provide lunches for those who may in fact be needing nourishment, or may in fact have some limitations in providing a good meal. But nonetheless, the coming together by these church communities who are providing. I guess on the other hand, East Mountain in Hamilton, there's a series of churches who provide a monthly lunch. It's free, or a donation is accepted. And it's usually just soup and a sandwich and just socialization. But that is the community element, the building element, where you have a chance to sit down, perhaps with strangers, perhaps with neighbors, that you can exchange information and start building a community. And so, I'm awfully sorry, I'm going to have to go get a drink of water. I've been conscious of not taking too long, but, oh, well. Anyway, excuse me a moment. I guess it's nerves. Not used to such an awesome group. But anyway, I guess the other little clipping I got that I'd like to call to your attention was the fact that in the Time supplement on Saturday, if you subscribe to the Spectator and want to get the New York Times international version, I don't know how that works, but nonetheless, they have occasionally good articles. And this one caught my attention. This one was called "How Do You Survive in a Disaster?" And survival of the fittest. And they offered you a whole bunch of these kits, medical survival kit and flood survival kit and all sorts of survival kits. I guess I must have hit something.
That's okay.
Sorry. Do I have to turn something off?
I got it.
Oh, you've got it. Okay, I'll move over. But anyway, the fact remains that in spite of all these survival kits that they're offering, and there's quite a few varieties you can offer and pay a great deal of money for, at the bottom line is, she says, living in a tight-knit community where you know and trust your neighbor is the surest way to survive a disaster. She actually owns a company that makes these survival kits. But she says the bottom line is a tight-knit community, knowing your neighbor, knowing who's around, and be willing to trust them. Those elements were the elements that she spoke about. I'm not trying to sell survival kits. I'm simply saying I'm trying to sell neighborliness. I guess that would be the most important part. So I've skipped around a whole lot, but nonetheless, I guess that's the basic message, is trying to encourage, help people to build. We've got a little bit of time. I'm going to just conclude with this little reference to this book that I just found. Again, a clipping in the newspaper put me onto it, and then online, and I had it in my room, in my house in about 3 days, and just almost about finished it. But it's called Deepening Community. Deepening Community, and we've already spoken about some of the elements here. And I'm just going to conclude with what he says about community. First of all, Tamarack is the program that this gentleman has developed, and he's now he's Canadian, living in Waterloo. Wonderful fellow, coming from an Amish and Mennonite tradition, and that sort of finds its way into his approach to building community. As you know, when a barn burns down in Waterloo County, what happens? The people get together and build the barn raising. And it's a tradition that's really, we're losing a lot of that. And so he's written this little booklet called Deepening Community, Finding Joy in Chaotic Times. So there is a way of getting through difficulties and problems that you might experience, but a strong community is so helpful in doing this. And it's rewarding for yourself as a participant in this. And so let me just, as I say, conclude with this. He starts off at the very beginning of his book. He says, I hope that you will join me in exploring the possibility of a deeper community today. And he says, this is my call to you. I'm reading it from the text. To us, to work together to deepen community, to make conscious and proactive intentional effort to hold on to and to build connections. To hold on to and to build connections between us. Connections that will help us resist the pull of the many social responses and the complexity of our time. What I will speak of in the following chapters, he says, is the shallow community, a fear-based community, and one that is based on the true community. And this is the most important part. Community is not automatic. In other words, you could all, here we are, all in the same room. Are we a community? No, not yet. We had some beginnings because we can exchange names and see each other and say hello and maybe share some other things about it. But we're not a community yet. So, his point, community is not automatic. It is not automatically optimal. It may not be the best. We cannot take it for granted. We cannot assume that it is what it should be. We cannot stand on the sidelines and just hope that things will work out. And I think that's where I'd like to stop.
I'm wondering at this point if I could ask the panelists to come up to the front, and maybe Joyce, you could help me collect questions that we can bring to Joyce. Yeah, and take a moment to write down any questions or comments, and then we will bring them up first. Oh, absolutely. And if somebody does want to ask a question without writing it, that's fine too. Sure. Community groups that are involved. Oh. Thank you.
Take your time.
That takes some time.
I've got one here. Can we read the older adult plan before it goes to City Council? Unfortunately not. You should be able to, but simply because of the process. But if you go to we will have a report up there in the next couple of weeks about what we heard from people. It will be on the Council on Aging website. So the other thing I'd like to say about that though too is the way we're presenting to council is it's not a finished effort. That we have to go back to the community and validate and see what it means to them. because that's typically what you should do. It is what you should do when you're doing public consultation, but because we only had 4 or 5 months, they wanted something before the election, to be honest. So we would be recommending that there's a chance to take it out to the community, because in the end, what matters too is how it affects your own neighborhood, because every neighborhood is different. And so we'll talk about, one of the biggest issues we have is on transportation. And as you all, I'm sure you all have the same experience, it's fine if you're driving, but if you don't want to drive, or B, or it comes to a point where you can't drive, then there's a real challenge, for people to get to where they want to go. And that leads to social isolation and a lot of things. And so there are some interesting things we have having discussions around transportation and things that ought to be explored. And the biggest ones are on the recreation. And I've had a lot of, my friends from Dundas here will, I've done a lot of work over the last year, apart from this older adult plan piece, with thinking about what people need and want in their community, because again, as I said earlier, they don't want to necessarily go to a senior center, or they want to be with a lot of people. And so there'll be a fair number on recreation, based on the kinds of things that I said today. There's a question for you, Steve. Please tell us someone else.
I have a question. How do you start a village? This person's in a townhouse condo site with 3/4 of the owners over 55. This could work for a community. The website, Village to Village Network, has a lot of resources on building community. And what we're trying to do with our little group, which I guess our little group that we've been working on for a year has about 16 people who've agreed to be in a group, and then about 100 people who are watching. And at any time could decide to join or run far away, we don't know which. And we're just kind of learning what the process is. And one of our goals in talking about it is, and we're co-housing, seniors living, creating a development and living together is an option that we're considering, but we're not focused on, well, in this group, we're going to plan this for our group. It's a matter of, we all need to be learning about these options. And when it comes to learning how to receive help and give help, learning how to be generous, learning what hospitality really means, for us that's a key word. What we're trying to do in the group is learn more about hospitality so we can be hospitable everywhere we go, in every group connection we're in. So we're trying not to be an inward group. There's going to be 16 of us who know how to do it. We're trying to use that group to learn how to do it wherever we are. And I also live in a condo and a complex of 36 units, and I would say there's only one unit which has somebody under 55. I think it's not a seniors complex, but it is in reality. And right now, I guess the average age is between 65 and 70. Well, in 10 or 15 years, that average age, people are going to move out, et cetera, but we're going to age, right? And we could be talking now, and I'm kind of wondering when to raise it with my physical neighbors, and using this broader group where we live all over the place to kind of practice that. Because when you talk with your physical neighbors, you can't take it back too easily, or you can't move to another network, right, too easily. But I think, and my daughter who lives in an intentional community pointed out that if you have 36 units, the 8 people in 5 of the units could decide to be an intentional community. We're going to help each other out. So if you need, we're going to get to know each other, we're going to get together once a month to eat, and we're going to go on hikes together or whatever. And if you're going to the hospital, if you have grandchildren coming and you need somebody to stay, you need an extra room, you could have a room in our place. So you could just have people who live in 5 of 36 units become a community. And I don't know what that does to the dynamics of the people who are not in the community, But it's an idea. It isn't that you would have to persuade 36 of 36 units to be part of the community before you have a community. You know what I mean? And there's the notion of inclusiveness and exclusiveness, and I think from what we've been reading, it's really important to think of hospitality and taking risks. You know, we're all worried about the person who you can't stand. And the Benedictine approach to that is each person in front of you is an opportunity to serve and an opportunity to learn. And you know, who knows, it might be us. Something might happen in our aging brains where we're going to be the obnoxious person. For all we know, we already are. But it can happen, and so we need to, instead of run away because, you know, there could be an obnoxious person we have to deal with, I think we want to work on being open. And there are a lot of resources. What we're finding when we contacted to make the video, we had to get permission from Village to Village and the Seniors Cohousing to present some of their slides. And what we learned from Village to Village is there are now quite a few of inquiries from Canada. So there are 200 communities villages officially belonging to the network. They're mostly American. The few Canadian tend to be in British Columbia, where people are moving into this setting, right? But people are moving into Dundas. People are moving into Hamilton. People are, anyway, there are these inquiries about building villages, and there are state of grace documents. So if you're going to form an actual community, people have already gone through the process whereby you kind of agree to various values in different groups. Some of the books and the references give examples of lots of different groups with different values getting together on the basis of different sets of values. Bernie has an interesting question about males.
Yes, I do. Being the sole male on the committee. No, you know, I just don't know the answer to that question about including more senior men.
What's the question? Including males in community. Oh.
Yeah.
Some of the
Including
comment
males in
was
community.
on the number of males in the room. And that's a general issue when you have groups to begin with, right?
You know, this happened in a large group. We were talking about that at first place. There's no possibility if you know who I'm referring to. But one gentleman simply stood up. He says, you know, it's hard for me to join a group because as soon as I approach another individual, people think I've got a hidden agenda. That could be male or female. I avoid choosing the gender. The fact is that oftentimes they're suspicious of gentlemen joining a group, as a mixed group or just a single gender. So anyway, it's an interesting observation, but as far as incorporating gentlemen in this kind of a setting, I really don't have a good answer for that. We can only invite, we can cajole, we can do all sorts of things. I don't know what the answer would be, to be honest, how we could be involved. But it certainly is important that the male population be somehow encouraged to come. But I don't know what is easy to do about that. This brought together another example that I had. I volunteered at McMaster Lodge, as was mentioned, but the fact was that partway through the little program that we had, which was more, well, it's kind of newsy sort of stuff, I sanitized the news and read articles that I think would be appropriate. Anyway, one particular participant just finally stood up and said, I'm 91, I'm independent, and I still take care of myself, and I'm going to leave. So I said, well, I just simply said, you're welcome anytime, come back and see us. Really, there isn't a whole lot you can do to people.
What was the question?
I beg your pardon?
What was the question on the card? I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. It says a few people who are just plain difficult. The person who you try to avoid once you spot them at, let's say, at the grocery store. And well, I encountered this individual in a group at McMaster Lodge. So it can happen anywhere, and I don't have any answer to that other than saying, try to treat them courteously, with respect, invite them back. That's what it's sort of like St. Paul's message, you know, as soon as you offer a cup to somebody who is angry with you, he rocks on their head or something like that. Anyway, so be charitable, be kind to those who may be difficult to get along with. And perhaps they'll in time come along, or later may think about it and may choose to do otherwise. And so that was a couple of them. As far as the author of this book is concerned, you don't have to write anything down. His last name is Born, B-O-R-N. But the fact is, I have that on anyone who would like to have this reference or others that I have, you'd be welcome to take a copy of it. Yes, Ellen? You,
Yeah, Sarah Denise. You're going to the gosh. So,
oh, okay.
Do you have a question?
Well, they all ended up here. Did you want to
We all
add to
have
these?
cards. We all have different cards.
Yeah, we all have our own pile.
You all have your own
Yeah.
cards? Okay,
Sure,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
so I got a question. Will you participate in the municipal elections to seek positions on seniors issues for candidates? Well, we're presenting this, firstly, we're being, the city of Hamilton is funding this project that we're doing with recommendations. So their position will be clear when they pass or don't pass. Some assume they'll pass the plan. But the other candidates, the Council on Aging decided not to because they felt a little bit compromised, because they would be compromised because of the fact that we were working on this plan with the city. But personally, because I know some people, I have friends who are running in this municipal election, so I've been sending them stuff. And I think it's worth actually doing outreach to invite them to the presentation of the plan. I'm thinking that would be something I'm going to suggest, because I think that would be, at least they'd hear it. So, and I'll do one more, because I got a question here. Are you aware of the program in Halton to build temporary trailer type homes? Is it maybe containers? Because that's kind of what people are doing. On properties, seniors' properties, are renting out their large homes to gear to income tenants. I don't know about that, but I do know. Who asked that? If someone wants to talk to me about that after. I wouldn't mind hearing about it. If you would give me some information afterwards, that would be helpful. We do have connections in Halton. There's actually a community of people working on age-friendly around Ontario that's starting to emerge, a community of practice, we call it. And we're actually trying to learn from each other, which is a really great way. You know, no one wants to reinvent the wheel on this stuff, so. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I have one about the importance of intergenerational relations for building senior support options. With regard to seniors co-housing, some housing is seniors only as a group plans it. The usual approach is a smallish group makes the plan and decides, say, to build a building or to renovate a building, and then they recruit people to buy into what they've designed. And there are two kinds. One is explicitly seniors only, and you can define senior, different groups would define it as 50 plus or 60 plus. I think the Zoomers now are saying 40.
That's just,
45.
Moses Namer is the only one that thinks that.
Oh.
Because we're expanding the market.
But yes, but focused on adults and senior adults. And then others explicitly work in a way to have young people. So families with children, at say a building which might have 36 units and maybe 10 or 12 of them would be families, and then you get the intergenerational connections, and you get the older people able to take care of kids while the parents are working. You get younger adults around to do some of the heavy lifting and some of the driving, and so you get a natural situation for the helping, and you get mentoring of the grandparent age of the young kids, etc. There are some building issues that if you're going to have some units with children, then apparently that affects a lot of the design issues. So it starts to become child-oriented. So some are preferring to have seniors, adults only, in the plan of the building. But seniors want connections with other generations. We don't want to be just sliced off. The most important is to try to locate your building in the middle of happening, in the middle of a municipality, near the library, near the schools, near the parks. Some of us have our eye on the Parkside High School in Dundas. And dream of a senior center and a senior co-housing or seniors apartment right next to the tennis courts and the track and the lawn bowling and the baseball fields and the pool and the skating and just where life is happening, having a seniors building next to where life is happening. So if you can have a building near where life is happening, you don't have to build all the life into your building. The old idea in North America of having seniors developments out by a gorgeous lake or a gorgeous mountain, 30 miles or 100 years from where anything else is happening, is being rejected by the baby boomers coming through. We don't want that kind of thing, because then we have to create the whole life. And if it's all with people over 60, it can't be the whole life. So we're wanting ways to get vans and have transportation and or monorails or whatever. But and it doesn't have to be in the downtown of the city. It can be in a smaller community. But where there are the arts and connections with young people. So I think that in response to the question, intergenerational connections are a foundation of any kind of mutual support community, that we want to be looking into that ways. For example, if you have a common room, you might build an extra place big enough where you could have sponsor some teen activities and some mentoring activities or some craft activities with teens and older people, or some teaching of some activities to young children. So you could build in your common space some space for specific intergenerational activities.
I have one other question here on darts. Have you considered proposing darts vehicles allow people to board along their routes without advance booking? That hasn't come up, but I actually will bring this to darts because I'm speaking at their annual general meeting next week, so I'll ask. And the guy who's the head of darts is actually a very creative, innovative thinker. He doesn't have a lot of latitude, I don't think, to implement his ideas, but he has he's really knowledgeable about. The sisters started this amazing kind of shared ride model in Niagara called Niagara Connects. And so we're trying to put some different, more creative ways of finding shared rides that are, that meet the efficiency needs and meet people's needs door to door. So we have a recommendation that he's actually crafted. Don't tell anybody he crafted it in the older adult time. So we'll see what happens with it. But certainly the same kind of thing that's being spoken of in the Dr. Siddon's report, Living Longer, Living Well, talks about that kind of thing. So we'll see what happens in the provincial election next week, whether we have no more public transit in Hamilton, or whether there's possibilities for innovation. Yes.
Just in response, it says, how can neighborliness be promoted when there's so many, we've been so indoctrinated in being independent and being on our own and take care of things on ourselves. And the answer to that is, you have to reach out, you have to go next door, knock on the door and say, hello, I'm so-and-so from next door, or down the hall, or whatever you might say. And the book, Deepening Community, speaks about this. We can find community and belong to a community at any age. At any age. It's important and essential to have community in your life. And it's important to reach out. There's no way around it. You have to make some kind of a gesture, some kind of a initiative, some kind of a hello, stand on your front lawn, maybe greet people as they walk by, hopefully they do walk by. But the fact is, it has to be an initiative. You have to do something, so to speak. And hopefully people will be open to that. Usually they are. I mean, you usually don't get too much anger in those situations. Maybe avoid it during election time. They might think you're trying to get a vote. But the fact is, it's a matter of reaching out and perhaps doing it more than once. I don't know what the answer is. Someone asked, how do you get people together or make a community? I'd say an informal gathering is the most, with no obligation. Have a coffee, somehow get together and just share something incidentally. In an apartment building, what we did use was a common space. And we brought coffee and somebody had to pay for it, but nonetheless, we brought coffee and tea, and people came if they wanted. If they didn't want, that was fine too. But the fact is, make it informal, make it easy, make it convenient, and hopefully people will be inclined to come out and join you. Be a good neighbor.
I have a couple questions about other nationalities and other countries. Does a common nationality help build a better community? It can, and certainly some of the ethnic communities have been building long-term care facilities, retirement homes, the Dutch, the Greek, the Ukrainian, yes, Portuguese, Polish, etc. And now some of that is based on this stereotype. My research is in I do some psycholinguistic research, and there's an unfortunate stereotype that we inevitably lose English as a second language and revert to mother tongue. And that's not even true of people with dementia, and definitely not true of people who are cognitively healthy, except for if you surround yourself with people, if all your work was in English and everything else happened in French or Russian or Ukrainian, then if you stop work and you're just living in your original language, you'll lose your mother tongue. But that would have happened at any age. It's not part of the aging brain, it's part of the social structure. So people often lose facility with English as a second language because they become part of their national heritage group. And that raises the question, if you develop senior co-housing for people all of one ethnic group, you have, especially if you have people who want to speak the language and have different traditions and food preferences, etc., that can be very enticing, but you have to balance that with the idea that then all of these people, as they age into their 70s and 80s, might be losing facility with English. So you have the bonding possibilities of people who are just like yourself, but you're maybe come to be looking too inward, and that's true about organizing it around any particular interest. So there are senior co-housing communities built around people who are in visual artists, or people who are retired church ministers, or whatever. So you have those common values to build your community around, but there's the danger of becoming more and more extreme in how you're different from the rest of society. So it's just something to keep in mind. A related question is, what do other countries do about co-housing? And the approach of seniors co-housing with small, private, complete space, your whole apartment or owned private space, connected with larger communal space, that model comes from Denmark and Germany. So some of the basic books by Scott Hansen, that's the last name, Scott Hansen, is based on work on 20 or 30 years experience with cooperative and co-housing in Denmark and Germany, where there was public funding, a public commitment to this being an appropriate way to house people of all ages. And it's been taken to North America, focusing on the senior population. Then there's a final question: should seniors have free transportation throughout the province or the city? I think more important is have accessible, available transportation. Since we're so spread out, the buses just don't go everywhere. And if we build new facilities, we want them to be on a bus line. But But ideas like share rides or van to bus, some smaller vehicles that would take you to the bus, I think would probably have a bigger impact than having free. There's subsidized transportation now. My husband pays $200 for the seniors bus pass for the year.
And people 80 and over in Hamilton have free.
And
free
it
buses.
is free if you're over 80,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, 80 and up. Hamilton, I think, was the first municipality in Ontario to do that.
Hamilton was the first municipality?
I heard that, I don't know if it's true.
Yes.
Realize I love it in my stomach.
Well, join me in thanking our panel. I'm sure you're all going to go home today with some new words. Hospitality, generosity, kindness. We've got to do the work. We've got to get out there. And I'm sure we've got all kinds of inspiration today. And isn't it wonderful to know what the city of Hamilton is doing? And isn't it wonderful to know what is going on in some apartment buildings? If you just get off your floor and there's somebody serving you coffee and wants to have a little chat. I wanted to close with just reading a couple of these selected quotations. Perhaps ironically, while the oldest old may live alone and emphasize independence, many are only able to be autonomous because they ask for help. They, like all of us, balance dependence with independence. Connecting with another person is a deeply fulfilling experience. When a group of people purposefully stretch themselves by connecting to each other beyond the borders of selectivity and commonality, a profoundly hospitable community is created. A community in which belonging, contribution, and accomplishment occur regularly and naturally. Now that's something to look forward to during one's second journey through life. And to conclude with the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, a very well-known Vietnamese Buddhist monk, he says, "It is possible that the next Buddha will not take the form of an individual. The next Buddha may take the form of a community practicing understanding and loving kindness, a community practicing mindful living. This may be the most important thing we can do for the survival of the earth." Thank you for your participation.